Welcome to the Insight Channel, your user's guide to living life with vision loss. I'm Jazz, I'm a blind occupational therapist, and I'll be your guide. Today we're going to talk about meal preparation. This can seem quite challenging if you have vision loss, but it doesn't have to be as long as you're using the right adaptive techniques. Thank goodness, because I am the main chef in my family. If it were up to my husband to feed everyone, my children wouldn't know the difference between a vegetable and a meatball. So we are going to start by talking about knife management today and dispel the misperception that people who are blind shouldn't handle knives. So let's start with the basics. It all begins with storage. Where you place your knives is the key to safety and independence. You should always know where all of your knives are at all times. Use a wooden knife block or use a drawer organizer. My favorite knife actually comes with a cover on it, so that's an even extra protection to make sure that you don't find a blade when you're not looking for it. But you never, ever, ever leave a knife just laying around in the kitchen where you may forget that it's there and accidentally encounter it when you're looking for something else. Also, you don't ever want to throw a knife into a sink full of dishes and sudsy water, because then you have no chance of knowing where it is. And when you reach in to get dirty dishes, you might find the blade with your hand before you find the handle. A way that you can protect yourself from doing that is to actually wash your knives as soon as you're done with them so you can put them away where they belong. That's the safest thing that you could possibly do. But if you don't have time, another technique would be to put your dirty knives between the faucet and the wall. And as long as you do this consistently, you'll always know they're there. So when you do have time to go and wash your knives, you can safely retrieve them. Now, the key to success with this is making sure you always have the blade pointing in one direction and the handle on the other, so you always know that you're grabbing the handle when you reach. Now, my favorite thing to do is I have a favorite knife that I use for most of my meal preparation, and so I keep it right in this spot between the faucet and the splash guard, and I wash it immediately after I use it, put it right back. It's there when I need it, and it's safely tucked away. Whatever system you choose, you need to be sure to educate your family and friends so that they can keep that system going as well. Because no matter how good you are at putting knives away, if your family members aren't doing the same thing, you could get hurt. So be sure that your friends and family are on board with this technique so that you always know where your knives are. So let's talk about how to transport a knife safely. I have got a little bit larger knife so you can see it better for this demonstration, and there is a sheath over it, so I'm not walking around with an exposed blade, just so you'll know. Usually when we are handling knives in the kitchen, we're not paying attention to everything that's going on around us. We're focused on the sink, and then we move to the stove, and then we move to the countertop. And when we're moving around, generally, people tend to normally keep their elbow bent. Well, where does that put the blade? That puts the blade sticking straight out in front of you. So what if somebody comes into the kitchen and you don't realize they're there and you turn quickly? That blade might make contact with that person. And so it's dangerous to move around with your elbow bent. If you're going to be transporting a knife, the safest thing for you to do is to actually straighten your elbow so that the blade is pointed down to the floor. Because if you run into someone or someone startles you or you trip, that blade is going to hit the floor and nothing else. That's the safest thing that could happen. It's important to define your workspace, and you can just use a common kitchen towel to do that. If you are blind, it'll allow you to use your sense of touch to define your area and keep track of all of your tools and what you need to do the job. If you have low vision, you are going to want to make sure that you have a task light shining right on your workspace. This is a good example. This is a portable light that can easily be moved around your house wherever you're working. And then you want to focus on contrast. Now luckily nowadays there are many different options for cutting boards. You can get them in all kinds of different colors. I have here red, white, and blue. I have shades of pink and purple over here. But the important thing with the cutting boards is not the fashionable colors, it's more of what contrasts with the food that you are cutting. Right now I have a block of cheese. It's cheddar, so it's yellow, and it's sitting on a white cutting board. That doesn't offer a whole lot of contrast, but check this out. This is my favorite cutting board. If you flip it over, it's black. See how the cheese pops out now? It makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing. So use that concept when you're cutting different colored foods. Handling a knife safely begins with knowing how to tell which side of the blade is the sharp side. And there are two methods for doing this safely. First, you look at the design of the knives themselves. The handle has a unique shape to give you a tactual indicator as to which side is the sharp side. If the handle is straight and leads perfectly straight into the blade, you know that that is going to be the dull side. But underneath, where the handle meets the sharp side, there's usually a protrusion that sticks out. So when you're choosing knives, be sure to choose knives that are easy for you to tell which side is the sharp side. Now, a second method is to actually use your sense of hearing to know which side is sharp. So for a serrated knife like this one, this is a steak knife, all you have to do is run it along the edge of your fork. You hear that? It sounds quite different than the smooth side. That hardly makes any noise at all. So this is a technique that you can use when you're in a restaurant and you're not sure which side is sharp. Pay attention where you place your knife when you move it off to the side, because your proprioception, body memory that I mentioned in previous videos, can actually help you to keep track of that blade so you don't have to always be starting over to find which side is the sharp side. So slicing foods might seem a little scary if you're used to doing it with vision, but it is completely doable and safe if you use patience, focus, and the following adaptive techniques. There are 4 different techniques I'm going to show you here on how you can slice foods depending on what food you're cutting. The first technique is called the bridge method, and that's because we're going to form a bridge between your index finger and your thumb in your non-dominant hand. So this is the hand you want to use to hold or secure the food to keep it from sliding around as you cut. Now with your dominant hand, you're going to bring the knife over, and you always want to know where that blade is in relation to your fingers. So you start off by butting up the blade with the flat side of the cheese, and then you bring it to the very top edge of the cheese and lean it to the side so you can feel that your fingers are definitely in a safe distance from the edge. So once you know where the blade is in relation to your fingers, then you bring it over as far as you want to go and slice down. Slide it back up over just a tiny bit, make sure your fingers are out of the way, and slice down. The key here is that you're always making sure that your fingers are a safe distance before you slice down. So we're going parallel to the bridge. The second technique is the fisted method. Now that's not as popular, but if you're really scared about cutting your fingertips, then this might be the right one for you. You essentially make a fist and use that fist to push down on the cheese. Now this works best if you're cutting up something that's large and kind of flat and not rounded. So I'm stabilizing with the fist. I bring my knife, I butt up my blade to the flat side of the cheese, bring it up to the top, kind of angle it over to make sure that my fist is completely out of the way, and I can tell that it is, and then cut down using the same technique as I did with the parallel bridge method. There we go. For the third technique, I'm going to use a piece of celery because we are going to do the under the bridge method. So we're going to form a bridge with the pointer and thumb, and we're going to make a nice wide arch between those two. So you want to keep your hand up high. Now, instead of tucking your pinky, ring, and middle fingers under, I'm going to leave them out straight to make sure they're as far away from the blade as possible. So instead of now cutting next to the bridge, I'm actually going to bring the knife blade underneath the bridge between my fingers, right? And then cut down and out. Now for the fourth method, it's going to be dicing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up this celery a little bit so I can show you how to dice. Now I am using a modified parallel bridge technique by keeping my pointer finger on the top of the blade or close to it, so I always know where that blade is in relation to my fingers. So this is a great technique that you can use when you're cutting something skinny or small, like a piece of celery. But the dicing or chopping technique actually requires you to already have some things cut up a little bit in bigger pieces, and now we want to make them even smaller. So you want your non-dominant hand to hold the top non-sharp side of the blade while your dominant hand holds the handle. And we are going to simply keep the knife parallel to the cutting board and just go up and down and chop through the food that is on the cutting board. Now another way you can do this, if you're not quite comfortable gripping the knife blade itself, would be to take your non-dominant hand and hold it flat with your fingers straight out and away from the blade, so that you can use that hand to push down as you go up and down and simply chop up the pieces of celery into small parts. So as you can see, you don't need a whole lot to be able to cut with a knife safely. All you need is your favorite knife and a cutting board that meets your needs. And if you have low vision, be sure to have really good lighting. But there are a few extra tools out there if you're interested. They do make finger guards that are made out of metal that protect your fingers when you're cutting. And they even make templates made out of metal that give you little slots to slide your blade through to make it easy when you're slicing up foods. So now you have insight into how this works. You can cut food safely without sight. All it takes is special attention to storage, placement, your body movements when you're transporting knives, and your hand positioning when you're actually slicing the foods. Now remember, the key to success here is consistency, and you can only have consistency if your family and friends are following the same rules that you do when it comes to storing and handling your knives. So be sure to educate them. And hey, remember, in today's world, you also have a lot of options for purchasing frozen foods that are already cut up. So that's just a little extra tip I want you to know. Thanks for watching today. If you like this video, click the thumbs up at the bottom of your screen. Be sure to subscribe so you'll know when I post new videos every other week. Send me your comments, your ideas, your questions. I'd love to hear from you. My job is to give you the tips, tools, and techniques to be safe and independent with vision loss. So no worries, you got this. See you next time.